As conservatives, we understand that savings are needed now more than ever. You all know that we've crossed the terrible landmark of $33.6 trillion in federal debt, and that threatens our security, our freedom, our way of life. The Treasury Department announced earlier this week that we have to borrow, and the American people need to understand the scope of this. We are going to borrow an additional $1.5 trillion just to fund the government over the next 2 quarters, 6 months. We're going to have to borrow the money. This is not a sustainable trajectory. And so what's happening is the effect on the American people has been really devastating. You have record high inflation is causing real pain for hardworking American families. It's leaving their futures uncertain. Families are having to make very tough, life-altering decisions because the cost of living is too high. Meanwhile, the skyrocketing interest rates are quickly turning the American dream into a mirage for millions of Americans. We feel that acutely here. And that's why House Republicans will not stop until we get this job done. We're on pace now to have 8 of our 12 appropriations bills passed by flyout tomorrow, as you heard. And we'll be right back here over the next 2 weeks to finish the job. If you need a reminder, that's 8 more appropriations bills passed than the Democrat-led Senate, which has passed, as of today, 0 appropriations bills. We're doing our job, and we hope and expect that they'll do the same. Regarding Israel, while House Republicans are leading on approps, we're also leading the charge to support our cherished friend. And last week, in one of my first acts as Speaker, we passed a resolution reaffirming our commitment to Israel in its moment of peril. And now, as Israel begins the next phase of its war, it's been kind of disturbing to us. I've heard Democrats suggest that there needs to be a ceasefire. Let us be clear. We've been very clear about this. There was a ceasefire. It was before October 7th, and Hamas broke it, and Israelis suffered unspeakable acts of evil, as you've heard even recounted here this morning. Israel doesn't need a ceasefire. It needs its allies to cease with the politics and deliver support now, and that's what we're doing. House Republicans plan to do that. We're going to do it in short order, and it provides Israel the aid it needs to defend itself, free its hostages, and eradicate Hamas, which is a mission that must be accomplished. All of this, while we also work to ensure responsible spending and reduce the size of the federal government to pay for that commitment to our friend and ally. We cannot waste any time getting Israel the aid it needs. We're going to work on that. We'll take a few questions.
Mr. Johnson, good
Hi,
to see you down here.
Thank you.
You say that the GOP is unified. Is that to mean that you've been able to flip Thomas Massie and MTG in the last couple of days here on this Israel package, or are you moving forward without them?
I've had great discussions with Thomas and Marjorie, who are close friends and committed conservatives, and I don't disagree with them on many issues and principles. They understand the necessity of us getting our appropriations bills done and sent over, and also the peril that Israel is in. Steve Scalise mentioned that on Saturday we were in Las Vegas. We flew over there for the night to be with the Republican Jewish Coalition. And there was a gentleman there who was on stage who spoke before us, and he shared harrowing firsthand accounts. He was a support worker in Israel of the things he saw with his own 2 eyes. And I won't even repeat them here because it's just so jarring to hear it. But what they're doing to small children and pregnant women and the rest. I spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu on the phone on Saturday evening, and he used the terms that he the next day he used in a public statement, and he said this is a battle between good and evil. It's between light and darkness, and I could not agree more. There is absolutely no equivocation here. We have to stand with Israel, and so even our most hardline, fiscal conservatives and those who typically oppose the idea of foreign aid in principle, they understand the necessity of this and what it means, and so I'm optimistic we'll get those bills over the line. I'm not going to speak for either of them, but I'll tell you that I'm continually speaking with them, and we'll see how that goes.
Just a follow-up. You stressed the need to be able to pay for the Israel funding. As you know, President Biden has issued a veto threat on this bill. Would you consider putting a bill on the floor that includes funding for Israel but does not have spending cuts, or is that a non-starter?
No, listen, we are in dire straits as a nation, and if you talk to leaders at the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Pentagon, sometimes even in recent years under oath, they've testified before the House Armed Services Committee, where I served until last week. If you ask them what the greatest threat is to our national security, you would expect, most people expect they'd say China, Russia, Iran, terrorism. They say it's the national debt. We have to address it. We have obligations and we have commitments, and we want to protect and help and assist our friend Israel, but we have to keep our own house in order as well. And I think people at home, I think the American people understand that. At home, you have to balance your budget. At home, you have to make tough decisions. And Washington should run the same way. And so we are here to change the environment, to change the paradigm, the way Washington thinks. If we continue on the trajectory we're on, it's going to hurt our country terribly, and it's going to hurt hardworking Americans even more, seniors and the rest. So we have to, while we take care of obligations, we've got to do it in a responsible manner. So I made this very clear to the president, myself, in our cordial meeting that we had. I've made it very clear to our colleagues, House Republicans. Senate Republicans. I spoke at their luncheon yesterday. To every cabinet official I've spoken to, all the way down the line, that we're going to do this in a responsible manner, and that's a very important principle for us.